Thank you for joining us. And today, we are going to be covering some solemn themes. Number one, proof. The mark of Satan, the mark of the beast, proof will be implemented nationally, here in America first, and then internationally. We are going to unpack that for you today. And secondly, there is no doubt, headline reads, there's no doubt that the incoming president here in America will implement Project 2025, and that is Donald Trump. What do all these things mean based on end-time prophecies in the scriptures? What do all these things say to God's people in the last days as it pertains to the work of preparation, implementing those 5 keys of survival? You have to stay tuned. And today I do have a special guest, no stranger, Marie Diaz from Eyes on the Times. Let's get right into it, Marie. What are you focused on based on current events, fulfilling end-time Bible prophecies? Marie.
Well, Pastor, as you rightly stated, it is official. The leader of Project 2025 has stated that Project 2025 is the agenda and that President-elect Trump will be implementing their agenda. And so this has great implications for all of God's people. And we're going to dive right into that. So let's just take a look at this first headline, which is coming from Media Matters. And here it says, Heritage President Kevin Roberts says there's no doubt that Trump will implement Project 2025. You know, now this is quite a 180 when we're considering the remarks and statements that President Trump said prior to his election. And, you know, obviously the head of Heritage is contradicting what President-elect has said. And so the question we have to ask ourselves is, why is he so confident? Why is he able to make these remarks? And I'm going to submit to you that it's because he has everything in place that he needs to be able to fulfill their agenda. And so in order for us, again, to be able to understand the significance of what we're covering today, I think it's important for us to break down into great detail what the Heritage Foundation think tank, what they actually do in order for them to be able to move forward with their agenda. So we're going to take a look at several clips, and we're going to, give some brief commentary in between each clip. So let's take a listen to this first clip here.
Here it is. Clip on.
We're a public policy organization, so like other think tanks, we research policies. We work on every policy issue in the United States and also have a significant international presence. There are about 350 full-time employees. We're the largest conservative think tank in the world, best as I can tell. We don't exist to be the largest, but we've become that over the last 50 years because in addition to doing research, what makes us distinctive is that we also advocate for it. And so in Washington, we have a team of lobbyists who go and advocate for good legislation and work against bad legislation. So rather than the sort of quasi-university approach of most think tanks, there's a component to our work which is really focused on action. In fact, we have a sister organization, which I also lead, called Heritage Action.
That's a whole lot in that one remark. Marie.
Yes. And so a couple of things that I want to underscore, which he mentioned in the clip there, is the fact that their think tank, they craft policies, right? And the purpose of crafting these policies, obviously, is because they want to implement them. And he went on to say what makes the distinction between his think tank and other think tanks is the fact that they advocate the legislation of their policies. And so, of course, as we go through this presentation, you're going to see why that is significant. The other thing that we want to mention here is that their focus isn't solely on the federal level, but they're also going to help to implement policies through the state legislators as well. And so let's take a listen to the next clip where he's going to underscore this.
Before we go there, once I heard that clip, he just stated that they are the largest think tank, not only in America, internationally. Let that sink in. So whatever their policy is, whatever their goal is, it's not only for America. It's for the whole world. So let's say, before we prove it, that they want to join church and state in America. What is their agenda internationally?
Join church and state.
Let's say they want to implement Sunday worship by law in America, Sunday rest by law in America. What is the agenda globally?
Sunday rest.
This is the largest think tank, the largest policy making organization on the top side of the earth. Why aren't we focused on this organization? Why not? And remember, for the mark of Satan to be implemented, the mark of the beast, it's coming through policy making, legislation. That's how it's coming. And that's why we have proof. The mark of Satan, the mark of the beast, is going to be implemented nationally and internationally. And he's on record stating Sunday rest, Sunday worship by law. That means the organization supersedes presidents and prime ministers. Think about that. Here it is, clip 2.
Second point of distinction is that in addition to the work we do at the federal level, we also have a lot of activity in state capitals and state legislatures. And so what we're trying to do is, in the United States, revitalize federalism so that more policy action is coming from the states, making Washington less important.
Marie, before you go, let
Sure.
me add on that point. I mean, what if I am an employee of a company and the CEO makes a statement publicly, and over again, when I'm interviewed in the public, I contradict that CEO? What would the CEO do to me?
Get rid of you.
If the CEO doesn't do anything, so who is in charge? Well, let that sink in. Murray, go ahead.
You're right. Well, it goes to show that, obviously he has his own agenda in mind, regardless to what the president is saying. And this is what I think we want to emphasize here in this presentation. So again, now we just want to reiterate what he just said in that clip that was just played. He talked about the fact that they are moving aggressively on the state and the local levels. Now, this is significant because we are already seeing the effects of what they've done through this think tank to have its effect in some of the legislation that has been coming out from some of the local governors and the legislators, like I said, on the state level. More namely, we're talking about the fact that they just recently introduced, commandments and placing Bibles back into school, and they're incorporating religion into the curriculum. And Pastor, you've done several presentations where we've been able to show that there is a direct link between Project 2025 and some of these governors who are introducing these religious laws. And so the other point that I wanted to bring out, when we're discussing this idea of them working through the states, is the fact that Jonathan Berry, who has been working hand in hand with Project 2025, in fact, he wrote the labor standard portion of the Project 2025. And he states that in that they want to be able to legislate Sunday rest laws, Sabbath laws, and that they aren't looking to implement it at the federal level, but at the state level. And so again, this is important for us to bear in mind as we're looking at this through the lens of prophecy, to see how the Sunday law movement is going to gain its footing. It's not going to happen at the federal level. We saw this take place also with the introduction of same-sex union laws, right? It happened state by state. And once it had gone into a majority of the states, then they were able to legislate it at the federal level. And so this is why it's important for us to keep our eyes on the movements that are taking place at the local levels, because I believe this is where, the grassroots, and if you really think about it, right, grassroots movements don't tend to go straight to the federal government. It starts at the local levels, right? And it makes its way through the mayors and to the governors, and then eventually on the state level, and then you get to the federal government. So I think it's important as a people that we're looking at what's happening on the state levels. And so now we're going to move on to another point. And Pastor, you touched on it briefly, and you talked about the fact that this movement isn't exclusive to the United States. And it's unfortunate that I think that we've kind of looked at it as an isolated incident or an isolated movement here in the United States. But he's going to elaborate a little bit more on that point. And so we're going to take a look at this next video clip, and where he mentions how they're making inroads in other areas of the world. So let's take a listen.
Clip 3.
And then the last part, which you and I were talking about before we started our formal conversation, is that we're very active internationally. We're here in Britain often, across Europe, across the world. We have a big team of international scholars who've worked in a lot of presidential administrations. Perhaps some of them will be going back in. We'll see what President and the Vice President have to say about that. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is not just revitalize the conservative movement writ large, but also to make sure that the emphasis on self-governance, on freedom properly understood, on economic deregulation are not just happening in the United States, but in as many societies across the world as we can.
That's a whole lot right there. Marie.
Right. And so, I mean, he just said it, that this is a global effort. And so I'm hoping that as we're listening to these things, it'll help us to wake up to really see just that the Sunday law movement is making its way on in darkness, and that, it's on foot.